Welcome to Popcast,
a Patterns of Power podcast,
discussing grammar in the context of the reading and writing connections.
I'm Jeff Anderson.
And I'm Travis Leach.
And we're today's hosts for episode 9. This is a special edition with questions and answers for Popcast.
This is where we answer our listeners' questions. And where can listeners ask more questions, Jeff?
I'm so glad you asked that, Travis. There is a Patterns of Power community on Facebook. Patterns of Power community. It's a Facebook group, and to join it, you have to answer a couple of questions. So, you can't sell us sunglasses, but other than that, it's just yes, yes, no, no. Just answer the questions and you'll get let on. There are over 7,000 people on the Patterns of Power community, and it's growing every day. We would love for you to join us there and ask questions. Just for a little extra information about that Patterns of Power Facebook community, you can ask questions on the main page all you like, but we did make a special what Facebook calls unit, which is basically a subthread. A subthread or unit, if you tap on the unit, it's not going to give you a unit like in usual teacher speak. It's actually going to be a discussion thread for middle grade teachers or secondary teachers. So please come see that particular point. And it's where teachers interact. What we all the authors of the Patterns of Power community and the Patterns of Power family love that the teachers actually will answer your questions sometimes before we do. And they've got great answers and like multiple kinds of answers. And we'll be on there too, back and forth. So we'll be on that Facebook page as well. So give that a try if you'd like to ask us some questions. They might get answered there. They might get chosen to be answered on this podcast.
So this is our first special edition episode, hopefully of many, where we've already gathered some questions that we're going to talk about today and give you our best answers for those questions to support you in this Patterns of Power process in your classroom or with your group of teachers as you are going down on this journey along with us.
So who's our first question?
Our first question is from Wally from right up the I-35 in Waco. He asks, how do you grade and assess this process?
Oh, my favorite question, not. Let's just say it. Let's put it this way. Jeff Anderson is never going to write a book on grading. But what do you do? It's a realistic question. It's an actual thing that you have to deal with in schools. We know that. So I didn't mean to make light of it. And I love the honesty about grading. Because it's what can you grade? Well, you can grade the invitation to imitate if you like. You can grade an invitation to apply if you like. You could even do an invitation to edit, but we would expect some writing and stuff to go along with that. Those are better ways. What if instead of asking them a quiz, say, right, you've been studying serial commas for, 14 days. Just at the end of it, ask them, write 3 sentences using a serial comma. Broad directions, but then think about the thinking those kids have to do. They're not just adding in a comma. They're not just picking a multiple choice number. They're actually applying the learning, and the strength and the power of the cognitive thought and synthesis that has to go into composing a sentence is much stronger than doing a whole worksheet of questions. Just 2 or 3, and you could grade that. Or do 4 if you want to make it easy. They're 25 points each. That's one way I would address that. Now, when we're talking about assessment, I would always say writing. Now, you could say in your revision, go back and add this particular pattern of power to your paper, and then we could give them a grade for that in there, sure. But the best way to assess writing and where your kids are is just to have them doing writing and writing every day. You get better at writing by writing. We don't ever mean for this Patterns of Power process. That's why it's only 10 minutes a day, so that we're not supplanting real reading and authentic writing instruction. They need to be doing those things every single day.
And something that I would do in my classroom with a processed writing piece at the very end of that process, I would have students reflect on the process. So reflect on the different stages of the process.
Metacognition.
Some of the additions that they brought in throughout the process based on feedback either from myself or from their classmates. And this would be a great place to build in a space for them to discuss specifically a pattern or patterns that they may have incorporated into the process. I'm thinking about within a process piece, maybe we look at 2 different patterns. So reflect on one of those 2 patterns. And that in itself, that reflection piece, that's some deep thought as well. And that's a great place to do some assessment.
So Travis, what if kids don't say anything? This is a question from Sheila in Sheboygan.
Oh, Sheboygan, close to my stomping grounds in Wisconsin. Yes, Sheila, what if kids don't say anything? That is probably one of the...
Have middle school students ever not said anything? It probably has happened, but tell us about what you would do.
Sure. So my thinking here is to get over that just fear in your mind of a quiet classroom.
It is, because you know something's going on if it's quiet.
Right. It's fearful when they're just all of those eyes are on you, but in other spaces, a quiet classroom is probably something that I'm hoping for, right? In those quiet moments to think. I would first of all say, after you pose, so let's think about the invitation to notice. That's probably the starting point where kids are going to be the most apt to maybe have some
reservations.
Yeah, some quiet thinking time to grapple with that question. First of all, just be mindful that you are allowing and expecting time for students to think. So that 15, 20-second pause, that's okay. That's where students are reading the sentence. They're thinking through what they're noticing. They're processing that in their brain before that comes out as discussion.
The worst case scenario is they're burning a correct, beautiful sentence with a great pattern of power standard in it into their visual stores.
That's a great point. For me, though, I preferred scaffolding this from a least stressful environment into this whole group discussion. So I always like to start by having students think and write on their own, do a little solo writing time, interacting with that sentence. I would then move into either a partner or small group discussion. What I like about that is it builds students' confidence and it allows for them to revise their thinking. They can kind of play off what other people are saying, revise what they're thinking before we get to that whole group discussion. So by that time, they've had conversations, they've done some writing, they might have revised, so they're going to be much more confident and have already gotten some affirmation from their peers before they even share.
Sometimes it's as simple as a T-chart. And compare and contrast, let's say. On one side, put it the ways they're alike, and one side's the way they're different. And then as with a partner, they can discuss and brainstorm all the ways they're alike and different. And you can see the value and the retention that's coming from that. They will talk, but you just have to trust the process. They need to know that you're going to be kind to them. They need to know that they're going to be honored. If you have your kids not responding, make sure you tell them you can't really say anything wrong as long as you say something about this sentence, something you see, you notice, you wonder about. Any of those things are acceptable. And if your class is in a kind of way where kids are accepted for all their answers, then they'll share. Just sometimes it takes them a minute. And that's good because they're, like Travis said, they're thinking.
Yeah. And that's what we want in our classroom, right?
Our next question comes from Carl in Carlsbad Cavern, California.
Oh, Carl is asking about the order of the invitations.
Oh, yeah.
Is this like a hard and fast, we have to stick to this order? Or I think he's curious about that, the order that we
there's a couple of
students.
questions I hear that he might be asking. So, Carl, I'm going to give it my best. The first one I think you might be asking is, do you have to go invitation to notice, invitation to compare contrast, invitation to imitate, invitation to share and celebrate, invitation to apply, invitation to edit. Do you have to follow that order? Pretty much it's designed so that you go in that order, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can't dally or return, just like in the writing process, it's recursive. But yeah, starting with the invitation to notice is probably a good idea because each step kind of builds on the next one and we compare, contrast, all that. So I would say probably much keep that in the order, the invitational process or the patterns of power process. But sometimes people, when they ask this question, they mean it literally in the book, should I start with page 1 and just work all the way through? And no. It depends on your grade levels. Like I know a lot of teachers ask, well, are lessons for particular grade levels? Well, that kind of depends on the particular kids you have. It kind of depends on the particular standards you have because they're not always at the same standard level and across all the states. So do check out on stenhouse.com. That's
STENHOUSE.com.
Our sponsor. They actually have under resources on our page for the patterns of power, inviting adolescent writers into the conventions of language. On that grade 6 through 8, they have on that page resources. And under that resource, there are curriculum alignments if you need that. So don't forget to check there to back that up. But also, the order really just depended on your kids, and you can skip around. Don't worry about that. Usually, at some sort of district level or school level, there's some conversations that we have where we might consider what fits best with our particular standards and our particular set of kids. But there's no have-tos in the book. It does cover all the 6 through 8 standards, though, around the United States.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a starting point beyond starting with lesson 1, I think a great place for me to look, and other teachers have had a lot of success with this, is go through some writing with students and gather that writing and take a look at what patterns do you notice, where are they having some strengths and struggles, and you can maybe pull one of those struggles as a focal point for your first invitational process.
Well, so Ophelia from Orlando asks, what if kids aren't applying the pattern to their own writing? What do we do then? Ophelia wants to know, Travis.
Oh, that is a great question. What if they aren't applying it to their writing? Well, we have in chapter 3 of our book.
Chapter 3.
This is a focal point on all different types of applications. So if you didn't check out the 2-part previous episodes about the invitation to apply, we would strongly suggest diving back into that and listening to all of those options we have for application. But we really have 6 great options here. So if you notice that students aren't applying it to their writing, this is a great callback into that pattern to revisit it. And maybe one of those applications that you used, maybe it was a response to reading and you felt like that didn't translate over into their next processed piece. Let's head back over and maybe get into some more conferring with their writing, using some conferring stems, and discuss, like maybe hone in on that specific pattern.
And the bottom line is, how many opportunities have you given them to apply it before you're expecting them to apply it? You know this, we know this, but sometimes we need to be reminded. I know I need to be reminded,
yes.
And Travis needs to be reminded that it takes time. It's about progress, not perfection. So what we would expect is, if we haven't done enough invitations to apply, which we can do as many as you want, but you've at least done a couple, then we know that we can do more, where those are a little smaller, bite-sized chunks, where those are a little more guided and directed, and the kids are working and thinking about it. But we want that to happen at that particular time. What are you reaching for, Patrick? I mean, Travis.
We are looking at. I'll just hop into it. I was looking at that. The one of the application options is the community editing chart, which we again went into in a previous episode. But I just want to call back to that because one really important part of the community editing conversation is asking kids if they feel confident using this pattern in their writing. So having that conversation with students, if you notice them not using it, you can draw back to that through conversation. And especially if this is on your community editing chart, you want to draw back to, hey, this is a pattern that I thought we felt comfortable and confident with, come back and talk to me about what's happening, if we need to revisit it. I think putting some of that active learning and accountability in the hands of students so that they can talk to you about what's going on, I think that just continues to build that community of writers in your classroom.
So the answer is always conversation and try some more invitation to apply. It seems like that's what I'm hearing, so that they get that nudge. Nudge it, nudge it, nudge it. Oh my gosh, what do you hear, Travis?
I think that's the sound of the end of another episode
I can't believe it.
of our podcast.
We had so many more questions from Deborah in Dallas and Patrick in Portland and Hortense in Houston.
But I think we have some time, maybe in a future podcast, to get those questions answered. We hope that some of these were burning questions for you, and you got the answers that you were looking for. That's really our hope here in this conversation with you.
Oh, and there's one more burning desire that I have, and it's that I want to tell you that you should subscribe to Popcast. And if you do like the show, review it and give it a 5-star review if you like it. If you don't like it, stay quiet, move on. But if you like it, tell other teachers about it, and we would love to have you here in the future.
Yeah, we'd love to share this message with as many teachers as possible. So share it with your colleagues.
That's another Popcast on the books.
Look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.